Ukhetha is a black prison warder that's working in the apartheid system. Essentially, just the animosity that comes with being in a system that essentially wasn't pro-black people, but he finds himself, as his brothers and sisters would see him, siding with the enemy. So there's a lot that I also had to battle with. As far as how do I tell this guy's story as authentic as possible. And not just by using the term authentic, but by really diving into what was happening during the time, the socio-political context, what were people going through, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically. Regarding that also, they didn't have much opportunities. And what does it mean for somebody like Ukhetha to be working in the prison system where he's essentially the only black guy in his section, but he's now seen as siding with the enemy, oppressing his brothers and sisters. So that essentially was the big challenge for me to play out. It's a universal story because you can screen this film anywhere in the world and people will understand what is happening, because you can remove the fact that the story is told during the apartheid era, and you can replace it with any time where people were oppressed. We could have set it up in the World War I or World War II. We could have set it up in the 1600s. We can even bring it to modern day where we see people oppressed by the system and how that affects families. Yeah. So it was really great to kind of explore that dynamic, also to make it relevant to Southern Africa and the African story told for the rest of the world to enjoy. And Ukhetha's story is quite interesting because the times that he was in, and when this story takes place, and what we focus on and what we zone in is how does the system affect this particular family, because family is a universal thing. You find it everywhere and anywhere in the world. The system, oppression, is a universal thing. You find it anywhere in the world. So the theme of how does the oppressed respond to the oppression, and how does oppression affect the oppressed? You look at just the state of the industry in Southern Africa, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The more we complain and say, oh, the industry of this, the industry that, there needs to be a balance between the powers that be within the industry. There needs to be support, both from the private sector and the government. So now we're moving into a space where we want to own our work. We don't want to work for peanuts. We don't want to just get called to set, and then you get paid your call fee, and then you don't see any royalty. Even the work that you created is playing in China for 6 months or for 6 years. You don't get a single check. I think there's a problem there. Are we gonna just sit around and wait for our public institutions to fund us, or are we gonna find ways? We have to find and create our own model that works for ourselves, that supports the producers, that supports the directors, that even supports the investors as much as it's gonna support the actors themselves. It's not an overnight pill. It's not a pill that you take and then all of a sudden you're on top. It's a lot of work that comes into it. You need to understand that it's a business. So when people look at you, they need to see a viability for the business. You need to be so certain that this is what you want to do, because you're gonna get tested, you're gonna get trialed. There's gonna be a lot of dark days where you feel like, what am I doing? Am I even supposed to be doing this? So my biggest advice is be certain and be sure that you want to do this. So start exercising those ideas. Get your stories, first step, get your stories on paper. Even if it's just that one line that's going to encapsulate what your story is about. And then going back to commitment, if you're not going to do the research of how to better tell your story is not going to get told. Shout out to EWN, shout out to all the news networks out there, shout out to the journalists that tell our stories, shout out to the creativities, shout out to our families, man, that support us through this thing called art. We love you, we appreciate you. My name is Thato Dhladla, and I'm out. Peace.